welcome to Past, Present, and Future, or Three Questions, the podcast where we learn about people's career journeys, how they got to where they are today, and where they'd like to go to next. I'm Parrots Cohen, a technologist and a wordsmith, and in my time in industry, I've been fortunate to work with both large companies and small startups alongside a number of very talented and hardworking individuals. This podcast is some of my conversations with them, where we learn about their journeys and what motivates them. If you'd like to be in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to have a certain level of seniority or a number of years of experience. We all have something to share and learn from each other. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast or get involved in the collaboration, we'd also like to hear from you. All right, looking forward to our journey together as we learn more about each other and enrich ourselves in the process. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We have an amazing guest with us today. We have Ruben. Welcome to the show, Ruben.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and happy to chat a little bit about my career. Yeah.
All right, let's dive in. Let's start with the historical aspect. Share with us, how did your career begin? What were the beginnings of your career journey in tech?
Yeah, well, I come from small town in Colombia, right? Like that's at the top of South America. I started my career as a mobile developer for applications for mobile phones, and I like to participate in hackathons and like that type of competitions. And one time there was a one kind of like nationwide competition organized by Nokia. And I won that hackathon, and with that I think that boosted my career, because later I was hired as a developer evangelist for Nokia in Latin America, and I moved to Mexico. And so that was kind of like a life-changing event that happened. With that position, I finally ended up in Silicon Valley, where they had the main office for the developer relations area for Nokia at the time. And that's how kind of like my career moved pretty dramatically after that. I think that on the things that are very interesting in some of the learnings that I got from that were that when I joined Nokia, that was in 2008, in Latin America, that was the place that you wanted to be, right? In terms of a developer platform and everything. The iPhone hadn't, like, it was just like in their early beginnings and everything. So in Latin America, Nokia was the leading smartphone manufacturer. And so when I was there, I enjoyed of, like, we'll go and talk to developers, and I could easily be in a stage with 500 developers without, like, any sacrifice to do that. When I came to the US, I saw the big difference, because there was not such big penetration in the US for Nokia phones, and also there were like the other big competitors growing up, right? Like Android at that time and iOS were like growing very, very quickly. So we didn't have the developer mindset here. And my learning here was just in general, because I saw the downfall of a platform that was very, what I would say, like a solid, and that had a lot of adoption in the developer's hand, because we were kind of like sleeping in our joy, right? Like, I think that the biggest learning there is that you need to always stay humble and hungry and curious about things, and never just settle because you think that you are in the best position. And I think that was an important learning that I took from that experience. Later, I ended up in Microsoft for a little bit after they bought a Nokia, and then I moved for a little bit to HP to work in some computer vision projects. But I think that the second part of my career is when I moved to Dropbox. I was working at Dropbox as a partner solutions architect. So this is kind of like the people who help in the partnerships. So it's not a sales motion, right? Like, it's more like a partnerships motion. And while I was there as an architect, I also had the opportunity to become a manager. And I think that that was the second big change that I have in my career, because I came from a world of comfort in which I was the highly regarded technical person into a world that was new to me, right? But at the same time, at that time, I just had a son at the time, and and I wanted to kind of like nurture that part of me that was about growing other people, and helping other people to be successful and learning. I think it was hard in the beginning because like delegation and stuff like that is very hard where you come from a technical background and you transition into a manager and things like that. But I also discovered that I felt pretty good about it. And with the time, I think that I ended up enjoying a lot being a manager and helping other people grow from multiple levels, right? Professional and personal. And I think that that was kind of like the big learning that I brought from my time at Dropbox, is that you can always reinvent yourself into something new, right? And I think that was good. The other exciting thing that at my time at Dropbox is that when I joined, I was like between the 500, below the 500 employees, a pre-IPO, right? And I went through the IPO process, and we like at halfway of my time there, we went on the IPO, and there was all the excitement of going public, and I think that was a very rewarding experience for me to be part of all that. And what I will say is like it'll bring me to the third leg of where I am right now. Now I lead a little bit larger team of developer relations at Adobe. We built a developer platform for the different Adobe products, and in special right now we're focusing on Adobe Express, which is the platform that my team has been building from the ground up. And I think that what is interesting right now is all the transition that we're seeing with AI and how developers are changing. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I think that in terms of learnings that I have had here, or like the main elements that I can see is when I moved to Adobe, it was into a product role, right? Now, if you heard me before, I didn't have like this product experience, right? I had kind of like a solid understanding of developer ecosystems, of like being a developer myself and all that. And when I was in my conversations with Adobe, they were looking for like a product manager of developer experience, and I talked to who is my manager and told him, like, I'm not the expert in the product. I have very solid experience on working with developers and understanding the developer needs. And I have worked with a lot of engineering teams building product pieces. And in that case, he took a chance on me in terms of like, that he felt that there are a number of product skills that I had and some of them that I could build, and that he would rely on the experience that I had more on the developer ecosystem. So now I have this kind of like product role that is in the middle of product but developer relations as well, right? So I am responsible for the end-to-end developer experience of our developer platform, but I also lead our like community team and all the resources and that we offer to the community in general. So I'll say that was a little another reinvention that happened there, that I think that was interesting and simply just happened, that I didn't necessarily go for that type of transition, or I thought I would be in that position some years ago.
Thank you so much. I think a theme for me, kind of as you were talking about your career and the different insights along the way, is definitely one of iteration, but not just kind of iteration and pivoting, but a series of pivots that are additive. Like in your current role, there is kind of an added product layer, but there's that basis of a understanding of developer communities and ecosystems, which builds on top of that. And I can definitely relate to kind of your experience in shifting and a manager seeing potential kind of on what you have already. For me, like stepping into program management was kind of a manager taking the opportunity and giving me that chance. And that's kind of opened a lot of doors for me. So definitely grateful for that. Um, in thinking about it, I think like a theme that you raised kind of in coming to the US and seeing the developer strategy for Nokia at the
Mm.
time, and tying into the theme of kind of some of the interesting things you're starting to see around AI and developer kind of strategy going forward. Um, what do you think the future looks like in terms of not taking your eye off the ball, looking
Yeah.
towards the future, understanding where developer trends are going, and to making sure that companies continue to focus on that audience and continue to not just build for what the trend of today, but what the next wave and the wave beyond that, etc.
Yeah. Well, I think that well, I don't know what the future looks like because, like even when you think that you have some understanding, there is something new that comes like every month or every other week, and then you're kind of like scratch your head again about that. But what I do think is that the change is right now happening across so many areas, right? Like for instance, it's not only about the tools that people have, but the developers who are coming, right? Like the new generation of developers who have at hand a big amount, all these plethora of tools that allow them to do a lot more with a lot less, right? Is bringing people with very different mentality. We've seen this in like hackathons and stuff like that we do with universities into like, oh, they pull out in a night something that I wouldn't imagine that they could, right? But also like the way that developers consume documentation today, the way that developers code, the tools that they do, that requires that we are all the time just rethinking, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing like are we, is it, is it still valid what we thought 6 months ago and put in a roadmap, today, or should we rethink it and maybe pause and look at what are the signals that we're getting and act upon that. I think that those are the things that are very hard today, especially for bigger companies that originally like to plan ahead a lot, right? And for which I am, but I think that we're trying just to listen a lot the developers, see what they are doing, and like being very curious ourselves all the time to try to understand those trends. The one thing is that there is no playbook, right? Like for instance, today you had to deal with that developers would prefer to go to a tool like like Cursor or Visual Studio to do a lot of stuff. Some of them by code, some of them don't go as far as by coding, but they may just use it for like code completion or even understanding, and they will not even maybe even touch your developer side or the tools that you created or like specific things, right? And but then that means also that you have to restructure your documentation so it gets consumed properly by the LLM, so it gets served better on your MCPs or all that kind of stuff. And you cannot just go and like go to a course in how to optimize your documentation, because like no one will tell you right now how to do it. The best that you can do is ask the LLMs themselves how they like things to be optimized, but that changes so quickly. So I feel that we're in a moment where like there is no roadmap, there is no path into how things are changing. We're just like keeping a very close eye on all the things, and yeah. So I think that's what I would say is just that from my learnings from my first time is that don't settle because things can change dramatically, right? In the blink of an eye, and you just need to keep your eyes very open and be very curious and humble. I think that's the word that I like to bring, right? Like staying humble, because I think that we lack a little bit of that, right? At that time, it was a little bit more like, oh no, like when I was in Latin America, I was like, oh no, the iPhone is too expensive, it will never be here, right? Like in Android, oh no, that is too rough on the edges, it's just like too new, etc. It'll never like surpass the quality of our devices and stuff like that. But the story told something else.
No, that's very, very powerful. And I think like some of those cycles, or kind of like even some of the classic works like The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, I think those cycles were longer, had longer tails, but today it's so much more faster. And I think the previous era of the internet was definitely building the infrastructure and more of an infrastructure mindset. And I think now, like even within product development, it's definitely much more kind of a startup mentality and
Yeah.
continues to iterate and listen and continues to pivot and
Yeah.
um, which is both exciting and terrifying.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know.
um, yeah, I guess like one final question would be like
Mhm.
someone looking to get into developer relations or kind of developer focused product management. What would you advise? What would you kind of point it or steer them towards as a starting point?
Well, I think that one of the trickiest pieces is today, right? In terms of, like what is the what is the right starting point, right? Because what I mentioned to you, like the developers are changing the way that they do things, right? So you cannot point to the usual, like what I would say, like the elements of, like of developer platforms or developer relations, right? Like for instance, we talk a little bit about this into like what I feel that are the basis of, like a successful, like product on the developer space, right? I strongly believe that you need to have a user base that enjoy that. So you need the product that that will create a that general user base that you can offer to the developers. And with that, you need to have the right tools that allow developers to unlock the value of that product, right? And with that, you have all the other pieces, right? Like the engagement and like community and all that. Normally, I advocate for a product right around like the developer tools and everything for documentation, right? Like the documentation is kind of like the base layer, minimal thing that you need with a developer program, because developers can do a lot without like community or without you reaching out to them. But once they start looking at the documentation, that's where they figure out everything. So if you have like really good documentation, that helps really by itself. But now we're in the dilemma that like, all right, so now what did who are we optimizing now for, right? Is it like human? Of course we're optimizing for human, but then there is also all the AI pieces that you need to do. So a little bit a hard for me to say specifically in which area. But what I will say is this actually is there is an opportunity to look at what the trends. I think that the change always bring opportunity, right? Because when things change, no one is a lot further beyond than you, right? You're kind of like have like a fresh start, right? Like so it's like when you have a programming language and then there's another one that comes strong, then you can just like jump in the new programming language. You don't have to learn all the other pieces to just have a head start. And I feel that we're in that moment, right? So it's probably a good opportunity for people who are jumping in the developer relations area to understand all the changes that are happening and to embrace all the new tools, because there is no one who has like a lot of years more experience than the other ones. We're all learning at the same time, so we're kind of like yeah, there is just so much that on the knowledge that has been accumulated in these like couple last years, and in with new tools coming every day. I think that there is an opportunity for everyone.
I think like the gold rush term is overused, but I'll use it anyways as kind of
Yeah.
as a nice term. And I think like if I think like positive idea, I think just like going out there and using all the tooling and
Mhm.
going through the user flow of what like a new developer who hasn't kind of used some of the traditional tooling and using more of the new AI tools, I think it's the opportunity to understand like
Yeah.
what would be useful for you, like as you're going through the flow, how would I be served documentation at this context point? What would convince me to kind of to invest more time and resources into a product?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and at the end, developers, at the end, what they want is to accomplish a task, right? And then with that, how can you help people to do that? And in a world in which now is even easier, right? Like now with the technical bar just like keeps going, like you don't need to be as technical every time, right? Like every time it's just like lower and lower and lowering the technical bar that you need to have a good understanding. And it's more about like now the how can you connect the pieces together and all that. So there is really a good opportunity for people to jump in the area and help other ones connect, right? I think that what I believe is just that as the technical skills are less and less needed with the time, right? You really need all those other skills that help you connect things that are more strategic, curiosity, all those pieces. And I think that there is opportunity for everyone to jump in those pieces, especially in the developer relations area.
Um, Thank you so much for joining us today, Ruben. This was fascinating and insightful, and it really kind of ties everything together from kind of the origins of kind of the tech industry to where we are today and to the exciting future. Thank you so much for being on the
All
show.
right. All right. Thank you for inviting me.